Hi everyone! Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm continuing my recommendations videos for great summertime reads, and for this video I am focusing on great summertime fantasy books. So I do have a mix of adult and young adult fantasy in this list, so I'll make sure to leave some timestamps down below. So without further ado, let's talk about all the books that I have. The first book I think is a perfect fantasy book for the summertime. It has to be Black Sun by Rebecca Roanhorse. I recommended this in so many of my videos, but I love it so much, and I really think it is so perfect for the summertime. The reason being, the world building in this one and the cultural elements in this one just scream summertime to me. This takes place in a world that's inspired by the pre-Columbian Americas, and you're following kind of three main perspectives, one of which is the perspective is from a young woman who is a part of this kind of religious sect in this world. You're also following a perspective of a thief, and then you're also following the perspective of someone who believes he is the chosen one of this celestial prophecy. So the whole book is kind of this journey leading up to this cataclysmic event that's supposed to occur according to this prophecy. And the pacing of this one, it truly had me hooked from page one, and I could not stop reading it or thinking about it until I had finished the book. The world building in this one is so incredibly unique and cool. Some of the creatures and the magic in this book is so imaginative and wonderful, and I absolutely loved the characters in this one, particularly two of our main characters, and exploring some of the dynamics between those characters was so much fun. So I highly recommend Black Sun if you're looking for a great summertime fantasy read, and I also think it's a good one to kind of escape into if you're not looking for something super dense, a little bit more fast-paced. This is a great one. The next book I have is The Thunder Heist by Jed Ahern. This was actually a self-published book. It is the first book in the Twisted Seas series, and I think that this is highly underrated. This is a heist story in a world where basically these characters live on what's an island of all of these different ships tied together, and you're following a main character who's kind of gathering up a crew to pull off this heist to get this very valuable thing. And I don't want to say too much more because it's quite short, and the heist plot is so much fun in this book, and I love a main character who always feels like they're one step ahead of everyone else around them, and that's definitely what you get from this book. So the fact that it takes place on these boats in the sea makes it feel like such a great summertime read to me, but it's also quick and it's fun and it's action-packed, and if you love a good heist story, then I think that this is one that you'll definitely want to check out. Next book I have is The Sword of Kaigen by M.L. Wong, another self-published fantasy book, and this is one that is extremely popular in the community, very hyped already. You're following a woman who is a mother and is a part of a nation who is kind of secluded from the rest of the world, and they come under threat of war and have to kind of figure out how to combat this threat, and you are dealing with not only prepping for this war and actual wartime tactics, but then dealing with the repercussions of the aftermath of that war. And the emotional beats that this book takes you through, it is such a roller coaster ride of emotions. It made me bawl, it made me smile and cheer. It's truly an unforgettable story, and the main character of Misaki is one of my absolute favorites. She's an incredible mother, but also an incredible warrior, and I just loved seeing that represented in a fantasy book. That's not something I read very often. So if you're looking to have emotional gut punches, this is a great one to go to. Also, the reason I'm putting it on my summertime list is because the magic system in this one feels very reminiscent of like an Avatar: The Last Airbender, where all of the characters kind of have these water bending abilities. So it kind of gives me those summertime vibes. Having the water bending is kind kind of your core magic that's explored in this book, but this book can truly be enjoyed at any time of the year. The next one I have is more of a fantasy romance, and it's not one that I personally enjoyed, but I think a lot of other people would enjoy it, and it is The Undertaking of Heart and Mercy by Megan Bannon. So this is one that I think leans much more heavily on the romance rather than the fantasy. So if that's something that you really enjoy in fantasy romance, you like kind of more of the focus being on the romance, then I think that this is a great one to go to. I will admit it reads more like a contemporary romance than I think it does a fantasy, so I would not go into this one expecting groundbreaking world building or really cool magic or anything like that. It truly is following these two main characters who kind of have this enemies to lovers situation going on. In the fantasy elements, there's kind of this parallel world that one of our main characters, Heart, who is a demigod, has to travel into to essentially destroy these zombie-like creatures. So that's kind of the extent of the fantasy, I would say. I think that this is a great one for the summertime because of its emphasis on the romance. It's cute, it's fun. For me, again, it didn't work totally for me, but I've seen a lot of other people absolutely love this. So if you're looking for a fun contemporary romance with some fantasy as the backdrop, then I would recommend checking out The Undertaking of Heart and Mercy. The next one I have is The City of Brass by S.A. Chakraborty. This is one that for me definitely screams summertime because you're following main characters in a world that is kind of a parallel fantasy world to Cairo, Egypt. So the world building feels very desert-like, and kind of the journey these characters go on through these lands is at times very atmospheric. I loved the world building in this one. I loved the characters in this one. I do think it's a little bit more political, so if you're looking for something that is more heavy on the politics, this might be a really great one. The plot of this one, you're following a main character named Nari, who is a con woman that lives in Cairo and accidentally summons this magical jinn and gets whisked away to this magical world of Davabad after being taken by the jinn, and essentially discovers things about herself that she never knew, that explains a lot of why she's able to do what she is. So I loved Nari as the main character. I loved her relationship with a lot of the other characters. So if that sounds interesting to you, definitely check out The City of Brass. The next one I have is The Bone Shard Daughter by Andrea Stewart, another one I talk about a lot on my channel because I absolutely love it. This is one that is definitely a great summertime read. The world that you're exploring in this one is essentially a collection of islands. All of these different islands you get to traverse between, and there's a lot of like water magic in this book. It feels very summertime because of the world building, but what I loved so much about this book in particular was the incredibly unique magic system that lends itself to exploring a little bit of horror elements as well as a little bit of sci-fi. It felt very much like a genre-bending fantasy, and there is a really fascinating mystery at the heart of this one, where at first you're kind of thrown in, given no sort of exposition, and expected to kind of just keep up with the characters as they live their lives in this world and start discovering kind of clues to the mystery at the heart of it. And you start to kind of understand about 100 pages in maybe what's going on, and trying to discover the answers to some of these questions alongside the characters is so much fun. So if you're confused at first, don't worry, it will click if you keep going, and some of the answers you get to some of these questions is so good. They're so good. So I loved this book. I think it's great for the summertime, but pick it up anytime. I think it's amazing. The rest of the series is not my favorite, but this first book is a favorite for me for sure. Two more adult fantasy books I have, the first being Kings of the Wild by Nicholas Eames. I think that this is just a good one for the summertime because it's a fun, lighthearted, what feels like lower stakes type fantasy novel. It's very self-aware of what it is, and it kind of pokes fun at some very traditional fantasy tropes. So if you're a seasoned fantasy reader or you like playing games like Dungeons and Dragons, I think you're going to really find yourself enjoying the humor that's kind of tied in to Kings of the Wild. You're essentially following this group of men who are these kind of washed up, older heroes of years past who have since disbanded their group and have gone to live their own lives. But when our main character's daughter gets kidnapped, they kind of come back together for one last hurrah to go and save this man's daughter. And it's just so much fun. The characters are so much fun. The quest, getting to our main objective at the end, is a lot of fun. It's not anything that's my absolute favorite, but I just had a lot of fun reading it, and I think it's a great one for the summertime if you're looking for a lighthearted fantasy book that at its core is really about like friendship, loyalty, family, that sort of thing. So really enjoyed Kings of the Wild. I think it's definitely worth a read. And the last book I have, but certainly not least because I love this book, it is Traitor's Blade by Sebastian de Castell. This is one that is a recent new favorite of all time for me. This is the first book in the Greatcoats series, and I absolutely love the Greatcoats. You're following characters who used to be a part of this elite corps of men and women who essentially were hired by the king to traverse and uphold the laws of the land under the king's rule. When the king gets murdered, these Greatcoats kind of get disbanded and are very much looked down upon. They really lose their reputation and kind of garner a new reputation of being like traitors. And so you're following these three main characters as they're trying to kind of bring back the justice to the land and fight back against the corruption that has arisen since the king's death. And I love our characters in this book so much. It's very much a swashbuckling fantasy with a lot of sword fighting and sword play that I think is expertly written. It was so much fun to read the fight scenes in this book. And even though I think it has kind of this lighter tone to it, there are definitely really dark moments as well in the series. So just be warned that it's not all lighthearted and fun in this series. You definitely deal with some heavy stuff as well. But I overall love the Greatcoats. I love the characters. I love the relationships. It's so good. And the twists and turns and here comes the cavalry. It's so good. So highly recommend Traitor's Blade. All right, now I have 3 young adult fantasy books that I want to shout out as well. The first being Raybearer by Jordan E. Fueko. I think that this is a fantastic one for the summertime because of the feel of the world and the setting that you're in with these characters. This follows a main character who has a mother who essentially curses our main character and is compelling them to obey this command, which is to gain the crown prince's trust through this competition, and by gaining his trust, getting close enough to kill the crown prince. So you're dealing with a character who is very much at odds with this curse that she has, as she's also trying to gain the trust of the crown prince and those around him and have these really incredible friendships. So I loved this book because of kind of the struggles of the main character, but I also think that the friendships in this book were outstanding. Like some of my favorite friendships in a young adult fantasy that I've read, and the world building truly was incredible. So I think Raybearer is highly underrated as a young adult fantasy. I would highly recommend this one to anyone who loves exploring really great friendships, but also really cool, unique worlds. So definitely check out Raybearer if that sounds interesting to you. The next one I have is The Girl Who Fell Beneath the Sea by Axie O. This is one that I didn't love personally, but I can see so many other people loving it, and it is truly such a good one for the summertime. You're following a girl who, to save his brother's love, she kind of sacrifices herself to this sea god, ends up in this spirit-like world, trying to survive and make her way back home. And what it really reminded me of was the movie Spirited Away. If anyone's ever seen that, what a fantastic movie that is. It had very much similar elements to Spirited Away, where once you're in the spirit world with this character, you're dealing with a lot of exploration of not only the world around her, but also like this main character herself discovering who she is. There's a lot of themes of like ancestry and family in this one, and I think it's really well done. I just personally wanted more from it. I wanted even more of a deeper look into the world and into the characters. So it all felt a little bit surface level for me, but it was still good, and it's very sweet. It's very light, and if you're looking for something that is kind of just this escape from the real world into this beautifully told fantasy spirit world, then I think that this is a really good one to turn to. So The Girl Who Fell Beneath the Sea, even though it's not my favorite, I think a lot of other people could really enjoy it. And finally, I have a young adult like sci fantasy book, and that is The Knife of Never Letting Go by Patrick Ness. This is one, again, can be read any time of year. I mean, any of these books can be read any time of year, let's be real. But I just think that for me, The Knife of Never Letting Go for some reason feels more summertime, because you're following a character who we have now since left Earth. Like, we are following a human civilization that is no longer on planet Earth. They are on some other planet that was recently colonized, and you're following a main character, Todd, who was born on this new planet. And he grows up in a village on this planet that is only made of men. Like, there are no women a part of this village, and all the men in this village can hear each other's thoughts through what's called noise. So when they hear each other's thoughts, they not only hear the thoughts, but they kind of see a visual representation of the thoughts. And so Todd, our main character, goes out exploring one day, and for the first time he hears silence, which he never has heard before because he's always been around that noise. And he discovers a girl, a very mysterious girl, and she's silent. He can't hear any of her thoughts. So this leads to a journey of figuring out, why are there only men? Where have all the women gone? What is this planet? What is this noise that we hear? It's so good. I loved the main characters. The book is told from Todd's point of view, and he's never been formally educated. So reading from his point of view, you're reading a lot of like grammatically incorrect sentences, a lot of like spelling errors are purposefully made in this book because it's assuming that Todd is kind of writing the story for you. And that was such an interesting choice. It really does let you get into the head of this main character. And he also has just such a distinct voice that I love. And I loved figuring out the mysteries alongside these characters in this book. I thought it was so much fun. So I think that this is a great one for the summertime, but any time of year, really. It's one of my favorites. So definitely check it out if that sounds good to you. So those are all of the summertime fantasy books I have to recommend. What is one book that you would recommend reading in the summertime? Let me know in the comments down below. Thank you all so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, make sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe if you'd like to, and I will see you all in my next one. Bye!